The offseason in Detroit has taken on a completely different tone, and it feels like we're watching the next major pivot point of the Brad Holmes era unfold in real time. The Detroit Lions are no longer the upstart underdog trying to climb out of a rebuild. They are a contender with expectations, a roster that has tasted success, and a front office now forced to make decisions not just about talent acquisition, but about sustainability, cap management, and maintaining a championship window. That's why this particular free agency cycle feels so fascinating. It's not just about who the Lions should add. It's about who they absolutely must avoid. If you rewind to the beginning of the Holmes regime, one of the defining moments wasn't a draft pick. It was a decision not to pay wide receiver Kenny Golladay after an injury-shortened season. The Lions stepped back, let the New York Giants hand out a massive deal, and avoided a contract that quickly became one of the worst investments in the league. That restraint helped shape the foundation of this roster. It showed that discipline can be just as important as aggression. Now, the Lions are once again at a crossroads, particularly at center. After the retirement of Frank Ragnow and the release of Graham Glasgow, the interior offensive line has entered a transitional phase. The name that keeps popping up in conversations is Cade Mays, formerly of the Carolina Panthers. On the surface, he looks like a young, battle-tested player who could stabilize the middle. But dig deeper, and the risk becomes clearer. Mays has started 27 career games, largely due to injuries ahead of him. His PFF grades have never climbed into elite territory, and while he's been serviceable, there's little evidence that he's a true difference maker. The Lions already have borderline starters in Juice Scruggs and Seth McLaughlin. Adding Mays doesn't solve the problem, it duplicates it. At center, duplication is dangerous. This is not a position to experiment with. It's the quarterback of the offensive line. Communication, chemistry, and consistency are everything. If Detroit is going to invest externally, the bar has to be higher. Players like Tyler Baiadas, Connor McGovern, or Ethan Posick would represent more definitive upgrades. Mays feels like the line of diminishing returns. For a team with Super Bowl aspirations, that's not good enough. And this is where the bigger philosophical question emerges. The Lions are in a different phase now. They can't afford to spend simply to plug holes. Every dollar has ripple effects, especially with extensions looming for cornerstone players. That reality became even more pronounced after the trade of David Montgomery. When the Lions sent Montgomery to the Houston Texans in exchange for a 2026 fourth-round pick, a 2027 seventh-rounder, and interior offensive lineman Juice Scruggs, it signaled a recalibration. Montgomery had been the thunder to Jahmyr Gibbs' lightning. He averaged over 11 carries per game across the last 2 seasons and provided the physical identity that complemented Gibbs' explosiveness. Now that role is vacant. Under contract, Detroit still has Jahmyr Gibbs, Sonny Vaki, Jacob Sailors, Kai Robichaux, and Jabari Small. But none of those names bring Montgomery's proven production. Vaki has just 7 career carries. That's not a succession plan. That's a developmental flyer. So the question becomes, how aggressively should Detroit attack the running back market? The high-end names are tempting. Kenneth Walker, Breece Hall, Travis Etienne Jr., Javonte Williams. But financially, those moves would be difficult to justify. Gibbs' role is expanding, and his extension is approaching. Committing close to $10 million per year to a secondary back would contradict the resource discipline that has defined this front office. Instead, the smarter play lies in the mid-tier and short-term market. Tyler Allgeier is intriguing. Physical, productive, still just 26 years old. He would seamlessly slide into the bruiser role and potentially provide longer-term security. But he may seek a bigger workload than Detroit can offer behind Gibbs. Najee Harris, coming off a torn Achilles, could be a buy low candidate if medicals check out. Brian Robinson offers downhill reliability and positive rushing metrics from his time in Washington. Isaiah Pacheco still runs angry and has proven he can handle volume. Nick Chubb is further removed from his peak, but showed signs of life in 2025 with over 500 yards on 4.1 yards per carry behind a struggling offensive line. Then there's the wild card, James Conner. Expected to be a cap casualty in Arizona, he carries risk with age and injury, but his connection to offensive coordinator Drew Petzing and schematic familiarity would make him a fascinating short-term gamble. This is where roster construction becomes chess, not checkers. Do you invest moderately in a stable veteran? Do you draft a mid-round bruiser? and pair him cheaply with Gibbs? Or do you trust internal development and preserve cap space for future defensive reinforcements? And that brings us to the defensive interior, where one decision feels far less complicated. Roy Lopez quietly became one of the Lions' most valuable depth pieces in 2025. Signed as a rotational run defender, he exceeded expectations in nearly every category. In 17 games, he posted 30 tackles, 2 sacks, 5 quarterback hits, and 4 tackles for loss across 425 defensive snaps. His PFF run defense grade ranked 16th among 142 qualifying interior defenders. But the raw numbers only tell part of the story. Lopez wasn't a flashy penetrator. He was a space controller. He destroyed blocks, maintained leverage, and allowed linebackers like Jack Campbell and Alex Anzalone to flow cleanly to the football. In a season where DJ Reader never fully returned to form and Alam McNeil was working back from injury, Lopez became the stabilizer. He even led Detroit's defensive tackles and sacks and quarterback hits on a limited snap count. When you listen to Lopez talk about Detroit, the cultural fit is obvious. He speaks about the defensive line room with reverence. He credits the environment for changing his career. Dan Campbell has publicly praised his disruption. Brad Holmes has emphasized the importance of strength in the middle. There is mutual respect here. Financially, projections vary. Spotrac estimates roughly $6.3 million per year over 3 seasons. PFF and other outlets project more conservative one-year deals in the $2 to $3.5 million range. Even at the higher end, this is not a crippling commitment for a 29-year-old rotational lineman playing his best football. Re-signing Lopez feels like the type of move that contenders make. Not splashy, not headline-grabbing, just smart, stabilizing football. And as we pivot toward the draft implications, the Montgomery trade also reshaped Detroit's draft capital. The Lions now hold 9 picks in 2026, including the additional 4th-rounder from Houston. Brad Holmes has shown before that he's willing to zig when others expect him to zag. In 2023, he shocked much of the draft community by prioritizing players who fit his vision rather than consensus boards. Could he move up? Move down? Package picks to chase a premium defender or offensive lineman? The flexibility is there. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the Lions' offseason strategy and want analysis that goes beyond surface-level headlines, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe right now. This is where we break down not just what happens, but why it matters for the future of this franchise. Finally, there's the tight end position, which might quietly be one of the more strategic storylines of the offseason. Sam Laporta remains the cornerstone. Brock Wright is a trusted complementary piece. But beyond that, depth is thin, and none of Detroit's current tight ends are signed beyond 2026. With Drew Petzing stepping in as offensive coordinator, speculation has grown about expanded tight end utilization. The premium names like Dallas Goedert, Travis Kelce, Isaiah Likely, and David Njoku would require significant investment. Njoku's connection to Petzing from Cleveland makes him interesting, but a 3-year, $32 million deal may not align with Detroit's resource allocation priorities. Instead, the Lions may look toward familiar, cost-effective options. Daniel Bellinger offers youth and developmental upside, along with improving pass protection skills. Chris Manhertz brings elite special teams value and blocking reliability as a TE3. Austin Hooper, once coached by Petzing, provides veteran receiving stability. Tyler Conklin, coming off a down year with the Chargers, could benefit from a reunion with Petzing after their overlap in Minnesota. This is less about star power and more about insulation. Insurance against injury. Flexibility against future contract negotiations. A contender's roster must account for both the present and the horizon. And that's the underlying theme of this entire offseason. Avoid redundancy at center. Be disciplined at running back. Reward cultural fits like Roy Lopez. Preserve draft flexibility. Add depth at tight end without overcommitting. The Detroit Lions are no longer chasing relevance. They're protecting a window. Every move now carries amplified stakes. One bad contract can ripple through extension talks. One misjudged free agent can clog development. One overlooked re-signing can destabilize a position group. This is where Brad Holmes earns his reputation. The 2026 season will not be defined solely by star players. It will be shaped by the subtle decisions made in March and April. The players Detroit avoids may matter just as much as the ones they sign. So now I want to hear from you. Which free agent do you think the Lions absolutely must avoid? And which move would you prioritize to keep this team in championship contention? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's debate the direction of this franchise as the next chapter begins.